When the veterinarian told them that Max could no longer work in the field due to arthritis, the entire team was devastated. But when he met young Apollo, Max's reaction would remind everyone just how special he still was. The cold winter morning in Phoenix brought an unusual buzz to the Desert Ridge police station. Footsteps echoed through the corridors, whispers filled the air. Today was a special day, both happy and sad. Sergeant Michael Torres, 42 years old with graying hair just beginning to show, was an experienced officer with 15 years on the force. Holding the veterinary report in his trembling hand, his heart heavy with dread, he walked toward Max with slow steps. Max, his loyal partner of 8 incredible years, was resting in his special orthopedic bed in the corner of the K-9 unit office. "Max, buddy," Michael called out in a soft voice. "I've got some news we need to talk about." The 9-year-old German Shepherd slowly raised his magnificent head, his dark eyes still sharp despite his age. His once steel-strong muscles had loosened with time, and Michael could see the stiffness in his movements that had become more pronounced over recent months. Dr. Sarah Wilson's veterinary report lay heavy in Michael's hands, advanced degenerative arthritis affecting both hip joints and the left shoulder. Continued field duty poses significant risks to both the animal's long-term health and operational safety. Recommend immediate retirement from active service. Michael knelt beside his partner, his voice breaking slightly. "The vet says your joints can't handle the stress anymore, Max. I know you still want to fight alongside me, but we have to think about what's best for you." Max's ears perked up at the sound of distress in his handler's voice. Despite his own discomfort, the dog's first instinct was still to comfort his human partner. He nuzzled Michael's hand, a gesture that had become their private signal over the years. At that precise moment, the station door burst open with a whoosh of cold air. A young officer entered, his cheeks flushed from the morning chill, and beside him trotted Apollo, only 2 years old, a magnificent German Shepherd with golden fur that seemed to capture every ray of sunlight streaming through the windows. His muscle structure was perfect, his stance confident, his eyes bright with intelligence. Sergeant Torres, young officer Jake Parker spoke breathlessly. "We brought Apollo from the training facility. His instructors say he's exceeded every expectation. His scent detection scores are off the charts, his obedience is flawless, and his protective instincts are incredible. He's officially ready for active duty." The timing was almost cruel in its perfection. Here was Max's replacement, arriving at the exact moment when Michael was grappling with his partner's forced retirement. Max suddenly stood up with considerable effort, his joints protesting audibly. Even though his arthritic legs were causing obvious pain, the old warrior tried to assume the proud stance that had once made criminals think twice. His eyes were immediately locked on Apollo, assessing, evaluating. Apollo had noticed Max immediately upon entering the room. The young dog approached with natural curiosity, his tail wagging slightly, but he stopped at a respectful distance of about 6 feet. It was remarkable, as if some instinctive part of Apollo recognized the authority radiating from the older dog. Michael took a deep breath, trying to compose himself. Max wasn't just a working dog, he was Michael's partner who had saved his life on 3 separate occasions, stood vigil by his hospital bed when Michael was injured, and had become as integral to Michael's identity as his own heartbeat. The other officers at the station had begun to gather, watching silently. They all knew Max's legend intimately, his neutralization of the armed criminal during the Metro Bank robbery, his discovery of missing 8-year-old Jennifer Martinez in the abandoned warehouse, the countless drug operations where Max's nose had led to seizures worth millions. "Max," Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper as he knelt down to his partner's level. "I want you to meet someone very special. This is Apollo. He's going to be working your beat now." The euphemism felt inadequate. Michael couldn't bring himself to say the words directly, couldn't tell Max that he was being replaced, that his days of purpose and service were over. Apollo, seeming to sense the gravity of the moment, slowly approached with careful steps. When he reached Max, he lowered his head in what could only be described as a bow of respect. The gesture was so natural that several officers in the room caught their breath. The two dogs began the ancient ritual of introduction, circling each other carefully, reading sense and body language with the sophisticated communication system that humans could only partially comprehend. Max examined Apollo thoroughly, not just his physical presence, but something deeper. His experienced eyes seemed to be evaluating the younger dog's character, his potential, his worthiness to carry on the work. And then something unexpected happened. Max, after completing his assessment, sat down directly next to Apollo. The old dog then did something he had never done before. He barked softly, not in aggression or warning, but in what could only be interpreted as instruction. It was a gentle, teaching sound, followed by positioning his body to clearly invite Apollo to mirror his stance. Apollo, displaying remarkable intuition, immediately responded to Max's cues. He sat beside the older dog, matching his posture, his attention completely focused on what Max was trying to communicate. "What's happening here?" Officer Parker whispered, amazed. Michael felt his throat constrict with emotion. "He's not just meeting Apollo," Michael said. "Max is accepting him. More than that, he's preparing to train him." What followed over the next several hours could only be described as remarkable. An invisible but powerful bond began to form between the two dogs. Max, moving slowly but with purpose, began what could only be called an orientation tour of the station. He led Apollo through each area with the patience of a master craftsman showing an apprentice the tools of their trade. First, Max took Apollo to the locker room, where he demonstrated how to inspect each row for contraband or weapons. His movements were deliberate and instructional, pausing frequently to ensure Apollo was observing. The younger dog followed attentively, occasionally mimicking Max's actions when the older dog would pause and look at him expectantly. Next came the training area, where Max showed Apollo the proper approach to various obstacles and challenges. Despite his arthritis, Max managed to demonstrate several techniques, though Michael could see the physical cost afterward. Then they progressed to the operations center, where Max positioned himself and Apollo optimally for observing suspect interviews and briefings. It was here that Max's years of experience truly shone. He showed Apollo how to read human body language, when to stay alert, and when to relax. "This is absolutely incredible," Chief Rodriguez said as he approached Michael. "I've been in law enforcement for 25 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Max isn't just introducing Apollo to the space, he's conducting a comprehensive training program." Michael stood up slowly. "Max always was special, Chief. He understood the job better than most humans I've worked with. I think he realizes that Apollo isn't just taking his place, Apollo is continuing his work." Throughout the afternoon, Max continued his informal academy session with Apollo. He demonstrated the correct way to inspect patrol vehicles, showing Apollo which areas were most likely to conceal contraband. He revealed the subtle art of positioning during building searches and began teaching Apollo about scent work, the most crucial skill for any K-9 officer. That evening, as the winter sun began to set behind the Phoenix Mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Michael prepared to leave the station. For the first time in 8 years, he would be going home without an active duty partner. "What do you say, Max?" Michael asked as he opened the back door of his patrol vehicle. "Would you like Apollo to come home with us tonight? Linda's been wanting to meet him, and I think you two could use more time to work together." Max's tail began to wag for the first time that day, not a subdued movement, but genuine happiness. He barked once, a sound that Michael had learned to interpret as enthusiastic agreement. The drive home was unlike any Michael had experienced. In the rearview mirror, he could see both dogs sitting calmly, but there was something different about their positioning. Usually, Max would lie down during car rides. Tonight, he sat upright, alert, occasionally turning to Apollo as if continuing their conversation. When they arrived at Michael's modest 2-story house, both dogs exited the vehicle together, moving as if they had been partners for years. Max led Apollo around the perimeter of the property, showing him the fence line, the gate locations, and what Michael realized were optimal patrol routes around their home. Linda Torres emerged from the front door, her face lighting up when she saw the two magnificent animals. She had been married to a K-9 officer long enough to recognize something special. "Well, hello there, Apollo," she said warmly, extending her hand for the young dog to sniff. "Max has told us so much about you." The joke carried real affection. Linda had lived with Max's retirement anxiety for months. Inside the house, the evening continued to unfold like a carefully choreographed performance. Max showed Apollo the layout, where the food and water bowls were kept, which areas were off-limits, where the best vantage points were for observing both front and back approaches. "You know, Michael," Linda said as she prepared dinner, "I think this might be exactly what Max needed. Not just retirement, but purpose in retirement. He's not just stepping down, he's stepping up into a teaching role." The next morning brought a new routine that would become legendary throughout the Desert Ridge Police Department. When Michael, Max, and Apollo arrived at the station, something had fundamentally shifted in the K-9 unit dynamics. Max was officially retired now, the paperwork processed, his badge filed away in the department's archives. But his influence was just beginning to expand in unprecedented ways. The training sessions that developed between Max and Apollo became a masterclass in law enforcement K-9 work. Other K-9 handlers began arriving early and staying late just to observe the informal education taking place. Max approached his teaching role with the same dedication he had brought to active duty, and Apollo proved to be an exceptionally gifted student. "Look at this," Officer Davis remarked one morning as he watched Max position Apollo for optimal observation during a mock interview. Max is teaching Apollo how to read micro-expressions and body language during suspect questioning. Indeed, Max had discovered ways to share knowledge that transcended normal K-9 training protocols. He would position himself and Apollo where they could observe interrogations through the one-way mirror, somehow communicating to the younger dog when a suspect was lying, when someone was about to become violent, or when a person was withholding crucial information. 3 weeks into their partnership, Apollo faced his first significant operational test. A complex drug trafficking investigation had identified a warehouse suspected of being a major distribution center. Apollo would be responsible for the initial detection sweep that would determine whether the surveillance team had identified the correct location. Michael suited up for his first major operation as Apollo's handler, but he wasn't going alone. Against all precedent and despite his retirement status, Max was also being deployed, not as an active participant, but as what Chief Rodriguez termed a tactical consultant. Apollo's performance was nothing short of spectacular. His scent work was precise and methodical, his alerts were clear and immediate, and his behavior under pressure was that of a seasoned veteran rather than a dog on his first major case. Within 20 minutes, Apollo had identified 3 separate areas within the warehouse containing substantial quantities of illegal substances. But it was what happened next that truly demonstrated the bond between the two dogs. As the tactical team prepared to move in for arrests, Apollo suddenly became agitated, his behavior shifting from controlled alertness to urgent warning signals that indicated immediate danger. Max, observing from his position 50 yards away, immediately began barking, not his usual teaching vocalizations, but the sharp, urgent alerts that had saved Michael's life on multiple occasions. The message was unmistakable, something was wrong, and human officers were about to walk into a trap. The team leader, recognizing both dogs' warning signals, called for an immediate tactical reassessment. Additional surveillance revealed what the initial reconnaissance had missed: armed guards positioned in concealed locations throughout the warehouse, ready to ambush the police team. With this intelligence, the tactical team modified their approach, neutralized the guards without gunfire, and successfully arrested 17 suspects while seizing over $3 million worth of illegal drugs. "Did you see how Apollo responded to Max's signals?" Chief Rodriguez asked Michael after the debriefing. "It's like Max's experience somehow transferred directly into Apollo's operational instincts." Back at the station, the successful operation marked a turning point in how the department viewed the unique partnership between Max and Apollo. What had begun as an unusual mentorship had evolved into something unprecedented in law enforcement. Their daily routine had become a carefully orchestrated combination of formal training, informal education, and genuine friendship. Each morning, Apollo would seek out Max for what the officers had begun calling the briefing, a 15-minute session where Max would review Apollo's performance and provide guidance for upcoming assignments. Max isn't diminished by Apollo's success, he's amplified by it, Linda observed one evening as the two dogs played in their backyard. Every achievement Apollo makes reflects back on Max's teaching. 6 months after their first meeting, the story of Max and Apollo had spread throughout the Phoenix law enforcement community and beyond. Local news outlets picked up the story of the retired police dog who had become a trainer for his replacement, and the response from the public was overwhelmingly positive. K-9 units from across the state began implementing similar mentorship programs, pairing experienced dogs approaching retirement with young recruits entering service. "What you've developed here isn't just touching," said Captain Maria Santos from the Tucson Police Department during a visit to observe the program. "It's revolutionary. We're seeing measurable improvements in training efficiency when experienced dogs participate in educating their replacements." During a particularly challenging case involving a missing child, Apollo's search seemed to hit a frustrating dead end. 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez had disappeared from a crowded shopping mall, and despite hours of systematic searching, Apollo and the search teams had been unable to pick up a scent trail. That's when Apollo did something that amazed everyone present. He abandoned his systematic search pattern and returned to the station, leading the entire search team back to where Max was resting. The older dog, despite his physical limitations, immediately understood what was being asked of him. Within 2 hours, following Max's guidance, Apollo located Emma Rodriguez in an abandoned utility building 3 blocks from the mall. The child was frightened and dehydrated but physically unharmed. "Experience isn't just about what you can do physically," Michael explained. "It's about understanding patterns, reading environments, knowing how scared children think and behave." Max still has all of that wisdom, and somehow he's been able to share it with Apollo. 1 year after their first meeting, the Desert Ridge Police Department held a special ceremony that brought together the entire law enforcement community of Phoenix. Max was being formally honored for his years of service and his unprecedented contributions as a mentor, while Apollo was receiving his first commendation for outstanding performance. As the ceremony began, both dogs sat side by side at the front of the room. Max, dignified despite his age and obvious arthritis, represented the wisdom of generations past. Apollo, alert and energetic but respectful, embodied the future of law enforcement K-9 work. Chief Rodriguez approached the podium. "What we have witnessed this year is more than just a successful transition from one generation to the next. We have seen how experience and youth can complement each other, how respect and mentorship can create capabilities that exceed the sum of their individual parts." The room erupted in sustained applause as both dogs were called forward. Max moved slowly but with unmistakable dignity, while Apollo matched his pace exactly, refusing to leave his mentor behind. Their partnership had resulted in a 40% increase in successful drug interdictions, a perfect record in search and rescue operations, and the development of training protocols being adopted by K-9 units across the country. As the ceremony concluded, Max and Apollo remained together at the front of the room. The older dog nuzzled the younger one affectionately, a gesture that spoke of pride, love, and the successful completion of a mission that neither had fully understood when they first met. Michael Torres felt overwhelming pride watching both of his partners. Max had taught him that true strength wasn't just about physical capability, it was about wisdom, adaptability, and the generosity of spirit required to nurture the next generation. Apollo had shown him that respect for those who came before was just as important as individual achievement. The partnership between Max and Apollo had become legendary not just within the Desert Ridge Police Department, but throughout law enforcement communities across the nation. Other K-9 units had begun implementing similar mentorship programs, recognizing the measurable benefits of pairing experienced dogs with newcomers. As the sun set on that special day, Michael took both dogs home in the patrol car one final time. In the rearview mirror, he could see them sitting together, Max, the wise veteran whose legacy would live on through countless future K-9 officers he had influenced, and Apollo, the eager student who had become a master while never forgetting his teacher's lessons. "You know what, boys?" Michael said as he pulled into his driveway. I think we all learned something important this year. The best way to honor the past isn't to preserve it unchanged, it's to build on it, to use what we've learned to make the future better. Max barked once, softly, the same gentle sound he had used during those first training sessions with Apollo. Apollo echoed the sound, and in that moment, the circle was complete. The legacy would continue, carried forward by those who understood that true greatness lies not in individual achievement, but in lifting others to heights they never imagined possible. The story of Max and Apollo spread far beyond Phoenix, inspiring similar programs in law enforcement agencies across the country. Their partnership had demonstrated that retirement doesn't have to mean the end of contribution, that experience has value that transcends physical capability, and that bonds between partners can grow stronger rather than weaker as circumstances change. Max and Apollo had taught everyone around them that some bonds transcend retirement, age, and even time itself. They had found something precious, a connection that would endure long after the badges were put away and the uniforms hung up for the last time. Their legacy would live on not just in the cases they solved or the lives they saved, but in the fundamental change they had brought to how law enforcement thought about experience, wisdom, and the value of those who had served with distinction. Max had found his purpose in teaching, Apollo had found his strength in learning, and Michael had discovered that the end of one chapter in life could be the beginning of something even more meaningful. The bond between all three, human and canine partners united by shared service and mutual respect, had created something beautiful, enduring, and transformative that would inspire others for generations to come. If this story of Max and Apollo's incredible bond touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing animal stories. Your support helps us share these inspiring tales of loyalty, friendship, and the unbreakable connections between humans and their four-legged partners.